Hello, I am going to show you a little bit of my studio. That's my yarn wall, and this is kind of the puppet area where I make little things. We're working on Stregonona right now, and here is my desk. And this is where I set up my paints, and this is where I've been working on the calendar, the 2021 calendar, and it's actually an independent study project that I'm doing with one of my professors. So you've seen some of the other months. This is June, and I really wanted to focus on the ethnic diversity that exists in our community. The Hmong people emigrated here 20 or 30 years ago, and they are expert morel hunters. So this is a Hmong man and his daughter, and they have brought their friends out. She's kind of like classic Montana woman, and here's another family, and he brought them all out into the pine forests, where there are burns from previous years, and the morels love growing right in the burn areas. So that is, so this is the month of June, and I've gone morel hunting, and it's really fun. It's really fun to go when there are a lot. And I started using different materials in my painting. So these are flowers, buttercups that I pressed, that I have become butterflies. And on my desk, sometimes I use wasps' nests, because they're such beautiful paper, right there. And then pressed flowers and other things I find. These are the watercolor paints I use. They are Dr. P.H. Martin's Hydrus, and they are wonderful watercolors. They are light fast and archival, and yes, and they are also transparent, but they can go extremely opaque as well. So these are some of my favorite kinds. And then back behind there is a tiny palette that I use for traveling, usually with a water brush, and then just an array of brushes and a palette of watercolors that I just really enjoy and used to use before I found the liquid watercolors, the P.H. Martins. And then I also wanted to show you, this is how I make my collage materials. Oh yeah, so in the calendar, so this is collage mixed with watercolor, and this is new for me, this whole calendar idea. Doing the independent study is that I'm mixing collage with actual watercolor painting. So this is all collaged in the clothing. Usually I collage in the textiles. And then, but her pants are painted, and her bandana is painted, and then that's a woven like willow and her elder basket. And then over here, his vest is collaged. The mushrooms I painted and cut out, and they're also collaged in. And then her textiles are also collaged in, and you can just barely see the knives they're using, some of the tools to cut the mushrooms. Her tool, although she doesn't have a hand yet, and then his set of tools. So I kind of work all around the page. I realized that was my working style. And so did my professor, and she thought it was pretty amusing that I kind of work here and there, and then don't finish body parts, and then come back, and then finish them at the end. And then I also thought I would put in some little fun things for the kids to find. So I don't know, that's gonna be maybe a woodpecker, some tiny mushrooms, and then maybe even like fairies or tiny gnomes, just to make it kind of fun for the whole family. And so, okay, so sometimes, well, I guess I'll start here. So I discovered that I love working with textiles. So this was a vintage apron, and I color copied it, just put it straight on the copying machine. And that's where I got some of the fabrics. Her shirt came from the vintage apron. Let's see if I can find there. Yeah. And then some of the other textiles also. And I love these old like vintage finds at thrift stores. You know, they're not expensive most of the time, and they're just like beautiful handiwork, all hand sewn, and just such treasures in themselves. And then I have these envelopes filled with collage clippings. And I found this wonderful book for like 50 cents or $1 at a thrift store. And someone else had taken photos of people's, of women's work, of these beautiful patchwork quilts, all made of, you know, different kinds of fabric and textures. And so that's where I have been mostly getting my beautiful collage resources from. And you can probably recognize this was from the December-ish month, where the witch is flying through the air and the cabin is made out of that, and some of the village folks' clothing comes from here, like some of those patterns are familiar. But yeah, so I think that about wraps it up. This is my work area. I was inspired by the artist Phoebe Wall, whose work was featured in Taproot magazine, and there are some of her work. She heavily uses collage materials and mixes them with watercolor and colored pencil. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks.